Yeah, for sure.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. Sorry about the technical difficulties. Hello, everyone. Thank you all for coming to the first ever Future Vets Club Alternative Paths to the OVC Livestream event. My name is Noam Eni, and I'm one of the co-presidents of the Future Vets Club. I'm going to explain how the event is going to run tonight. First, I'm going to call on the student veterinarians who will say a short introduction on themselves. After the introductions conclude, our wonderful executive, Elena, will relay any questions you have in the YouTube live stream chat to the student live stream veterinarian so they can answer them. Please be respectful in the chat and feel free to ask any questions you think of. I apologize in advance for butchering any of your names, but please let's get started with Darren Graham.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me okay? Awesome. So yeah, my name's Darren Graham. I'm a phase 3 veterinary student at OVC. I'm originally from Ottawa, Ontario. And I guess I'm here because my path was a unique path. So I'm an older student. I started university and went in to do engineering, but that obviously didn't go very well. So I dropped out and worked full time. Wanted to do with myself, and then I got the urge to go back to school, and I looked at college instead of university because I wasn't ready to go back for another 4-year undergrad degree. So I looked up the veterinary technician program. Was something I'd actually never heard of a veterinary technician before. So I looked at what it was, and it sounded super interesting, and I just kind of clicked that this was what I wanted to do. So applied for that, which was kind of crazy because I had to go
Darren, I'm so sorry to potentially interrupt you. It seems like your video has maybe frozen. All right. So I think Darren's screen is a little bit frozen. I apologize for that, everyone. We'll continue going through the introductions and hopefully get back to Darren at the end. So next, could we potentially go with Christina Mausen?
Yeah, hello everyone. So I'm Christina Mozon, and I'm honored today to be asked to speak at this event. So thank you very much. Yeah, I was accepted just like this past year into OVC. So I'm in an OVC class of 2024. So I'm phase 1 at Topaz Turtle. And though I'm keeping an open mind in my vet career right now, just because I'm still learning everything, my interest as of right now would be small animal medicine, along with wildlife and exotics. And then probably some veterinary research too. So just like everyone else, I began my journey as like an undergraduate student, except I didn't do it at the University of Guelph, so I did it at Laurentian University from 2014 to 2018. So I'm born and raised in Sudbury. That's where Laurentian University is, which is about 5 hours north of here. And then through this time, I did some volunteering at companion animal hospital locally there. Just like I'm sure many of you have, I also worked as an animal care technician at a local science center there, where I gained a lot of hands-on like wildlife experience. And then it came to like near to I was up getting into 4th year, and then I knew that OVC was like extremely competitive, so I tried to keep my career options open and just explore like other paths in case I didn't get into OVC. So I ended up doing a honors thesis, undergraduate project, and I did this in fish ecology. And I ended up working as like a field tech and a lab tech there, like throughout the year and throughout the summer. I ended up really loving research. So I knew that this was like an alternate path for me if OVC didn't work out. So I did apply to OVC, finishing my undergrad. I actually didn't get an interview, didn't get in. Obviously, that was super devastating, as I'm sure anybody who doesn't get in on the first try or second try or however many times, it is like really heartbreaking. But I decided not to give up. So then I pursued more of like my interest in research and ended up doing a master's at Laurentian University as well, just working under a supervisor who I had, like he was from my professor in undergrad, and we just got along really well. So I did some animal ecology research with him, and this also opened up other opportunities through my master's. So I was able to travel to different conferences, I was able to develop my own field program and did my own lab work for him for my master's. And yeah, and then I sat on multiple committees at Lawrence University, with one of them being like the animal care committee. So I worked with different veterinarian, like the university veterinarian, along with other researchers there. And we just looked at to make sure that the animals were used ethically if they were used in research on campus. And then, yeah, after defending my thesis, I still found out that like OVC was still my #1 choice. So I actually ended up applying to some PhD programs too at the same time that I was applying to OVC, just to keep my career options open. And then I ended up getting an interview and getting into OVC right after my master's. So now I'm here, and yeah, I'm very happy. I don't imagine myself being anywhere else. And that's my story.
Thank you so much, Christina. Can we move on to Dylan Mccaffrey, please?
Hey, everybody. I'm Dylan. I'm phase 3 at OVC. Same kind of thing. Had a bit of an atypical journey to vet school. It was something I always wanted to do when I was a kid. And, you know, if you asked me in like that grade 8 civics class what I was going to do, that's probably what I would have told you. And then as I got closer to graduation, the idea of doing 7 years more in school minimum was not so attractive for me. So I went and mentored with some people in Alberta and Florida and started shoeing horses for a living. So I've been a farrier now for 10 years. And I did that full-time pretty well when I got out of high school. And then my interest kind of evolved a little bit. And I started taking on kind of the interesting cases, the ones that need a little bit more vet attention, and realized that I wanted a little bit more freedom to kind of really take on a case myself. And that was really the drive that kind of helped me make the decision that, yeah, you're ready to take that extra step to vet school. So given that I had pretty well given up on, maybe not given up on, but it was a small voice in the back of my head by the time I graduated high school, I was like, I'm not taking grade 12 chemistry. I hate chem. And obviously when my plans changed, I had to kind of go back and do that. So I took a bunch of online courses and refreshed my physics and everything before applying to Guelph. Did 3 years in animal bio, and then got into OVC where I am now.
Thank you so much, Dylan. That was super interesting. Can we go with Elsa Labouchange next?
Hi, can everybody hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. So also thanks so much for having me. So I was born in South Africa. I moved to Canada with my parents and my brother when I was turning 17. So I just came here and like did grade 12. In grade 12, I had to do 40 hours of community service that everybody else had all high school for. Anyway, so my local animal shelter was my top pick for basically all of those hours. And after that, so I'm going to backtrack quickly. When I was 10-ish, I also had this thought that, oh, I want to be a vet. Like, you know, I went to the vet clinic with my dad and our one dog and stuff. And I thought, yeah, I want to do this. And then I'm not really sure what happened. That just kind of left my mind for like forever and ever, many years after that. But I always kind of like, if I had to, you know, volunteer somewhere, I'd go to a shelter, that kind of thing. It was always animals. And we also brought 4 dogs and 4 cats with us, and many of those I brought home. So, you know, it's always kind of been a common theme. But I went to university after grade 12, Trent University for psychology. And that was interesting. I enjoyed it, did a minor in biology, just sort of like in the background there, not a whole lot of useful things for vet school, I'll be honest, like very basic stuff. And so then from there, I kind of thought, oh, I want to continue on, do my PhD, go the academic route. So I came to UW, started my master's in cognitive psychology. I finished my master's, but then pretty early on into it, I was like, okay, no, actually research, not the thing for me. So I started Indeed.caing. I'm like, what on earth can I do other than school? And so I kind of like this ad popped up for grooming. I was like, oh, I was like joking to my roommate, oh, maybe I'll apply for this, and ha ha ha. And they're like, okay, go for it. And I'm like, oh, okay, maybe. So I did. So I applied and did not get that job because it turned out it didn't exist. But I went to PetSmart and I worked in pet care with like the fish and birds and reptiles and so on. And that was really fun. I still kind of had this weird hankering to get into the grooming thing though. So I applied to like a small, like one-person grooming salon, got in there, learned all kinds of stuff about like bathing and prepping for the groomer over about a year-ish. You realize how complicated things are and how much goes into stuff when you actually start doing the job. Because anyways, it's really interesting and it was really fun. Eventually, I ended up back at PetSmart as an actual groomer at that point. I was doing that for a year or so. And then I'm seeing animals all day and it's great. And I love working with animals. And I just kind of thought, I feel like I can still do more. So I applied to a vet clinic where I was a kennel attendant and kind of shadowed there and worked and so on, and decided, okay, you know what, I'm going to just give it a shot and apply to OVC. And I was really lucky. I had all of my prerequisite courses apart from biochemistry. So, oof, boy, that was fun after like more than 5 years of not having done any chemistry. And yeah, anyway, that was hell. So I worked full time and did that one course part time online. And I had to like submit an appeal and stuff to have OVC accept it. And halfway through the course of wanting to die, I thankfully heard that, yes, they will accept it. So it wasn't all for nothing. And yeah, so that's pretty much it. So I applied and I got in 2018 and I'm hopefully graduating next year. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Elsa. Can we move on to Gordon Lowe?
Yeah, so I'm Gordon. I did my undergrad at Western University. I kind of did know that I wanted to be a vet for a while, but I kind of wanted to keep my options open. So I didn't go to Guelph and I went to Western to keep my options a bit more open. So I did my undergrad in biology there. And it was in my third year where I took a psychology course in animal cognition, where I fell in love with canine cognition research. And it blew my mind that that even existed. I knew I loved dogs and I loved looking at them and working with them, but studying them, I didn't know people were doing that just for fun. So I volunteered for the professor that was teaching the course, and eventually that led to me volunteering for her supervisor, where he did a bunch of comparative cognition work with pigeons and rats and dogs, of course. So I really love that stuff. So in my fourth year, I also did a thesis with him in psychology as well, with dog cognition. And at the same time, I was also applying for OVC, but like others, I'm sure, I didn't get in after the interview for the first time. So I continued to do my master's with the same professor because I really loved the dog cognition part of the research. And I blasted through that master's in a year, hoping to get in after my master's, but I did not. So what are you going to do next? I decided to continue to do my PhD in the same lab with the same professor, where we did even more dog cognition stuff, because that is my favorite thing in the world. So yeah, luckily after 1 year, I finally got into OVC, and that was amazing. But I don't regret going through that path at all. I learned so much, and I still really love animal behavior and cognition, especially with dogs. So yeah, that's kind of my path.
Awesome, thank you, Gordon. Hannah Jansen, could we please have you go next?
Yep, are you guys able to hear me?
Loud and clear.
All right, so my name's Hannah, and I grew up in Seaforth, Ontario, which is just about an hour and a half west of Guelph. I grew up on a farm. We do have pigs here. And my alternative pathway started when I went into nursing school. So I did nursing as my undergrad for 4 years, graduated, and thought, nursing has been fun, but it's not what I love. So I started looking into what it would take to get into vet school. I've always loved animals. I love working on the farm, and I definitely missed being part of the farm when I was at school. And so what I did was I started looking into that while also applying to jobs in the States to nurse. So I worked as a nurse in Tennessee for a couple of years. And while doing that, I got all of my required courses for vet school. And then, similar to other people, I applied, was feeling very hopeful, thought my average was good, and didn't get an interview. And so I was confused and realized that, unfortunately, because I had placements all throughout my undergrad years, that those years didn't count as full-time semesters. So they were taking my first year grades. So I realized that my only way to get back in was, or to try and get in, was to get my grades up. So went back to Guelph for one semester, and luckily that was enough for me. And then during that year, so I ended up nursing for 3 years before coming back to school. And during that year, I was back home and I was nursing in Emerge in Kitchener, but I was also started working a little bit with Bob Friendship, who does swine. He's a swine vet at OVC, and worked at home, and also worked as a technician in a swine barn too. Luckily, I got in that year, and so I'm a phase 2 student, the same as Gordon. And yeah, my interests are in large animal medicine. Pigs are definitely up there, but I'm trying to keep my options open. So.
Thank you so much, Hannah. All right, let's go with Heather Reinhardt next.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me here. I just want to say that everyone's backgrounds coming into vet school have been so impressive so far. So congratulations, all you guys, for all your hard work. So I'm a final year vet student. So I guess I was admitted in the 2017 cycle. My atypical pathway started fairly typically, I would say. Always wanted to be a vet, grew up on a dairy farm, rode horses. At the end of high school, kind of teetered on that. I did apply to some human kinetics courses and stuff, but got into animal biology at Guelph, so that's where I went. Applied to OVC at the end of my undergrad and did not get an interview, did not get in. So I was kind of like, do I do an extra year? I needed the marks, or do I push on? So I decided to push on and start a master's in livestock nutrition, which ended up taking 3 years, unfortunately. My advisor got cancer in the middle of it. It was a massive project, but so I waited out the 3 years. I didn't apply during those 3 years because they said you should wait till you have publications and stuff. So I applied at the end of my master's and was accepted that year in the graduate cohort. So that was exciting and awesome. My interests are mostly large animal, coming from a dairy farm and riding horses. Most of my experience prior to vet school was with a high-level equine vet. I did spend 3 years working with pigs as well, and actually worked for Southwest Vets doing pig stuff. But I have to say, being in vet school and stuff, it's important to keep an open mind. Small animal medicine, the clinical atmosphere, is not necessarily what I love, but I do like small animal medicine. Being in final year, so I'm going to go into large animal medicine. I have a job in equine, and we'll be working a bit in a mixed animal practice. So just keep an open mind and keep things possible, keep those possibilities. I think that's about all. I don't think I have anything else.
Thank you, Heather. All right, we'll move on to Jenna Hopkins, please.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Jenna. I have always kind of known I wanted to be a veterinarian, but it's been quite a journey for me. So I graduated from undergrad at Niagara University in 2017. And I went to work at a human pharmaceutical company, and I joke about it all the time, but my job was literally to make drugs. So that's fun. At that point, I had already been rejected for vet school one time. So I applied to go in the fall of 2017 and didn't get any interviews and was rejected. So went to work. I skipped a year of applying because I didn't feel like I didn't have anything extra to add to my application, because I was graduating my senior year and then I started a new job, and so I didn't do anything that year. And then in 2018, I did a 2-month internship working at a zoo and I worked with like over 20 species of animals, and it was absolutely incredible. And then I applied again, and then that cycle I got 4 interviews, and I actually got accepted at 2 schools. So I got accepted at Ross, and I got accepted conditionally at St. George's. So they said if I did more hours, they would, by the time the semester started, that they would let me come in. I deferred my enrollment at Ross until May of 2020. And I just felt like I owed myself the opportunity to try again with either Canada or a state school, because I felt like I had a lot of ties here. I had a dog, my significant other lives in Canada, so I just didn't feel like I would do myself justice by going right to Ross. So I applied again. Well, I quit my job at the pharmaceutical company. I started working full-time in an animal hospital. Then I applied again, and then I got 3 interviews, and I got waitlisted at every single school. And it came down to, do I wait out the wait list or do I go to Ross? So I actually told Ross I was not coming. I decided I was going to try and wait out the wait list. And like 2 days before my flight would have left for Ross, I got the email from Guelph saying that I was accepted. So yeah, that's my story.
Thank you so much, Jenna. All right, let's go with Sonia. Ing, please.
Hi, can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Awesome. All right, so I'm a phase 3 student. I had a bit of a convoluted path. I bounced around a bunch of various disciplines. So originally, I was actually interested in human medicine, and I actually got into a couple of med schools in the UK out of high school, but I chose not to go to them and opted to do the pre-med program at Johns Hopkins University instead, and I majored there in neuroscience. Eventually, I moved back to Toronto, and I completed my undergrad at U of T. And then after that, I went into research for a bit with a heavily industry-focused project. I actually got really lucky. I found myself in a lab, and my professor ended up being the first chief scientist of Ontario. That position has now been eliminated because Doug Ford got elected, but such is life, I guess. But in this lab, I completed a Master's of Applied Science in Biomedical Engineering, and I did a neuroscience collaboration with that as well. And then I also worked in industry for a bit. And it's pretty exciting. A startup company was actually formed partially out of my research, and the company's doing really well now. They just got approval from Health Canada to run a phase 1 clinical trial. And I got to submit some of those regulatory documents, so that's pretty exciting. But research is really where the veterinary bell started ringing for me. I did a lot of in vivo work. I worked with mice, rats, and rabbits. There were a lot of different side projects that I was involved in the lab. And then we had a lot of research collaborations. So I worked pretty closely with a bunch of the lab animal vets and also some clinicians. So we had a collaboration with a couple of veterinary ophthalmologists, and that's exciting for me because I'm actually hoping to specialize in ophthalmology down the line. But research is really where things started ringing for me. And then I started getting my prereqs together. I needed 2 more at that point. I started volunteering at clinics at that point. I finished my master's, got into my first try, and here I am.
Thank you so much, Sonia. Darren, you cut off a little bit when you were first giving your introduction. Would you like to go again, potentially?
Yeah. Sorry about that, guys. I switched to my phone, so I'm hoping that'll work. My computer is outdated, just like I am. So I'll just start over because I have no idea where I was. So yeah, Darren Graham, phase 3 student, and I'm originally from Ottawa, Ontario. So unlike a lot of people here, I didn't think I was going to be a veterinarian. I started after high school. I went into university for engineering because I was like, oh, I'm good at math and sounds cool. Little did I know that I wasn't prepared at all for that experience. So I ended up dropping out after a year. And then I worked full time, paid off my student loans, and then started thinking about school again a few years after that. And then I realized I was like, well, I probably shouldn't try to go back right into university because that seemed daunting. So I went to, I looked at college programs in Ottawa, and Algonquin College had a veterinary technician program. And I had never even heard of a technician before. So I was very interested. I read what it was all about and realized that was exactly what I wanted to do. So I applied, luckily I got in. It was a great 2-year experience there. And by the end of it, I realized that I probably wanted to do more with this. So I started looking right away into options to get back into undergrad. And so I ended up going pretty much straight out of tech school into undergrad at Carleton, which was the exact same university I had dropped out of like years before. So that was pretty nice to get some redemption there. This time, obviously, I was dedicated and driven to what I wanted to do, so it went way better, needless to say. So yeah, I ended up getting a degree there and applied as soon as I possibly could to OVC. And yeah, I got in my first try, which was awesome. I did work a year in between because you cannot get into OVC in your second year of undergrad. You have to actually do at least that third year. So I figured I wasn't going to go back to school and spend all that money. So I worked as a technician. I also worked in summers and during this time as well. So I worked at an emergency clinic in Ottawa, and I also worked some research jobs for the government. So I'm not 100% sure what I want to do getting out of school, but I just applied for the Masters of Public Health program that they offer here after your DVM degree. It's an extra year. Yeah, I'm hoping to do something maybe broader, like One Health topics with my degree. But yeah, thanks, guys.
Thank you so much, Darren. And thank you, everyone, for giving those introductions. They're very, very interesting. And honestly, a lot of the different paths everyone was taking before, like, it's really cool to see how that kind of connected with your, not goal, but like your transition to vet school. I found it really interesting. So I just wanted to let everyone know really quickly now that we're going to have a short 2-minute pause. We're having a little bit of streaming quality issues, so we're going to resolve that now. And yeah, we're just going to take a short 2-minute break, and we'll be right back. All right, everyone. I'm going to officially conclude our break. Elena, if you'd like to relay the first question to the student veterinarians, that would be lovely.
For sure, yeah. So one of the questions that we had was, I know that some of you answered this in your introduction, but what made you want to switch from your previous path, if you had one, over to study veterinary medicine?
If anyone wants to answer that, just raise your Microsoft Teams hand and we'll just call on you to make it a little easier. I know some of you answered that in your intros, so that's kind of a general one. Might have been for the people who were technologically challenged. So I'll just ask this. Was finance a big factor in your decision to study veterinary medicine, and sort of how do you feel about that now and going forward?
Let's go Gordon, then Jenna.
I don't have that much to say really, but just to get the ball rolling. Like for me, finance wasn't really an issue whether to go to OVC or not, but a little bit of an issue to not go internationally as much. Because internationally for me, living here, it's massively different, and I totally feel for those who are international students at OVC, they pay so much. So in that way, it does make a big difference. Yeah, so that's my thought on that.
So I am an international student. So yeah, no, it's a big financial commitment, especially as an international student. But and I was accepted to Ross too, which is also international. So for me, it was kind of like weighing the pros and cons, because Ross was a little bit more expensive than what I'd be looking at to pay for either school in the States or Guelph. So that was part of the reason why I ended up choosing to not go there, and again, just kind of sit and wait on the wait list.
Thank you, Gordon and Jenna. Elena, would you mind going with the next question?
For sure, yeah. So again, I know that some of you answered this, but did any of your previous paths overlap heavily with veterinary medicine, and how did that change your perspective and how you approach vet school?
I can answer.
Oh, okay. Hannah, did you want to go first?
Doesn't matter, Heather can go first.
Go ahead, Hannah.
So mine didn't direct perfectly or overlap perfectly the same way with animals that other people's did, I think. But in terms of the medicine side, nursing and working as a nurse for sure for 3 years was definitely beneficial in terms of being able to understand how everything kind of works together, and it's made that school really interesting, getting to see some of the things overlap with what I got to see in practice with patients, as well as getting to understand some of the things that I didn't quite understand when I was nursing, but now can look back and reflect on that. So it definitely has made that school more fun, I think. But obviously I don't know that for sure because I didn't do it without doing nursing first. And then it's also, I think, directed what I want to do in an interesting way. I would say that human medicine is a lot more similar to small animal, but in terms of my interests and my life goals of wanting to work with farmers and work as a team in that sense, I'm trying my best to take what I've learned from nursing and then apply it into those settings as well. So I'm not sure if that completely answered the question, but that's been my experience.
Thank you, Hannah. Let's go Heather and then Darren.
Sorry about that. Yeah, so my pathway, I guess, like was fairly direct and it overlapped a lot, kind of intentionally. Like it had always been my goal to at least end up in an agricultural type setting. But it did change my approach and a little bit of my application to vet school, being that I was doing research. While I was doing research in nutrition, I was also working as a research assistant in dairy population medicine and did a lot of kind of repro research in that kind of regards. So in my application and in my interviews and stuff, I was able to kind of talk about research and research as a veterinarian and how that would kind of reflect in my career. And I do find that having that background has made some courses and some lectures and stuff a little bit easier to make applicable. Academia was not for me though. Like when I was doing my master's, they were trying to encourage me to carry on to a PhD, and I was like, academia is not for me. Like it's not what I want to do. But it was nice that I continued to have the overlap, and now I have a little bit of academia to draw from, but still made sure that I kept my hands on animals and kept it very applicable going forward, since I knew that was my end goal.
Thank you, Heather. Let's go Darren and then Christina.
Yeah, so definitely having gone through the technician program and working as a tech a little bit, definitely helped so far in vet school. I think for the first 2 years, because it's all pretty much theory stuff, I at least had seen and been introduced to a lot of those topics as a tech. Obviously, it goes into more detail in veterinary medicine, but I felt I had a good solid base. Honestly, like most of my undergrad, I don't think I would have been as prepared for if I would have went straight from undergrad into this program. So kudos to anybody who did, obviously not everybody went through tech program. So the learning curve there must have been pretty steep. And this year that we started anesthesia and surgery, again, definitely helped to get my feet going, especially for anesthesia, because I know that can be super daunting if you've never done that before. So yeah, definitely. I guess I don't recommend doing that much schooling, but the hands-on you get from tech is like irreplaceable from anything else that I've done. So yeah.
Awesome. And I guess I can go next. So yeah, parts of my master's I found did overlap with like some of the things that we're learning in vet school right now. It does make like some lectures easier to understand just because I've had like that previous experience with my master's. So things like when I did my field work, I was taught like safe animal handling because raccoons can be pretty vicious sometimes. When I worked with raccoons in my master's, I had to sedate them. So I learned like proper sedation procedures. I learned how to like calculate body condition for them. And then also like while collecting data, it was just a matter of knowing like what information is actually relevant in order to gather the proper information to answer a question. And then also some of like the lab procedures that I did, like proper collection and storage of blood, or being able to use different assays to analyze blood and like their components in order to answer these different questions. I found like these different parts of my master's really helped with my school right now.
Thank you, Christina. Let's swing to Dylan next. And then Darren, did you still have something to add, or did you just have your hand up? Okay, cool. Yeah, that happens to me all the time. Go ahead, Dylan.
He's just keen. Well, I wasn't going to answer this, and then Elizabeth Lowinger messaged me and told me to answer it, so I guess I'd better do that. So yeah, there were a lot of days when I was working with horses that, I was with a veterinarian and kind of bouncing ideas off one another and doing vet work. But I think one of the really important and kind of overlooked things is dealing with the people. And there were, I worked on 300 horses every 6 weeks, and that was a lot of owners when I was doing it full time. And they are all different, and they all have their own formula, and you have to kind of learn to deal with the good and the bad, and how to be professional when it's difficult to be, and how to try to make decisions that you think are best for the animal kind of come forward and get the owner to kind of see that. So it was a good lesson, not only in sort of the vet side of things, but also in dealing with, I shouldn't say dealing with, in helping owners and their animals, because that is such a huge part of this. And I think, you know, everything from the scheduling to being on the road all the time is pretty similar to what a large animal vet does. And I think really what I gained out of that was kind of learning what I wanted and how I work well, and finding a passion in the profession that really helped me get through undergrad. Because when you've studied for, you know, 1,000,000 days in a row and grades are all you've got for it, it's not much of a pat on the back, really. You have to kind of dig back to those things that made you passionate originally, and that keeps you going. So for me, that was really valuable. And yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Great answer. Yeah, definitely. Let's go to Elsa next.
Thanks. I just kind of want to actually echo what Dylan was saying, in that being a groomer for a while and also working in a pet store and that kind of thing, those were great for dealing or like learning how to work with people and talking with people, and you know, explaining things like, no, I cannot brush out your dog's tail that's full of dreadlocks, right? That kind of thing. And like, it's not good for the health of the dog and all that kind of stuff. Now my university background didn't do me a whole lot of good for stuff at OVC for the like theoretical aspects, but practically having worked and like worked with people also and pet owners, that was definitely more relevant. And also things like restraining animals. When I went from the grooming salon to the vet clinic, I was super surprised really to see that there's always somebody holding the dog when somebody else is doing something to the dog. Because if you're a groomer, you're just kind of doing it all by yourself. So I'm like, oh, well, this makes this much easier. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Elsa, and everyone for answering that question. Those were really awesome responses. Elena, would you mind getting to the next question?
Yeah, for sure. So our next question was, how did you bounce back after not getting into OVC, for those who didn't get in their first time around?
Let's start with Heather, then go to Jenna.
I think you kind of go through the phases of grief. First is like sadness, then it's anger, and you're like, this program's stupid. I knew applying. I had a ton of experience in that regards. My application was strong, but I knew my grades were not the highest. They were not horrible, but they weren't the highest. So it wasn't a complete shock. I think it was kind of a shock that I didn't get an interview at least. So yeah, I was pretty angry. I was pretty upset. But you need to kind of just take a breath. It happens to a lot of people. A lot of people don't get on their first try. And looking back now, it was a very long pathway to get in, because I then did 3 years of a master's degree, went into a lot more student debt. But I have a lot of life experience now. And looking back, I wouldn't change it for the world. And it's going to make me a better vet. It made me a far better vet student. Like, I was an exceptional vet student compared to what I was in undergrad, because I don't think I was mentally mature. And I think you just need to kind of think about that, and that there's a million ways to skin a cat. There's a million ways to get into vet school. And if you're determined enough, you'll make it happen. So that's just my advice to you guys, and just always keep your mind open and look for different pathways and avenues. And if you really want it, you'll make it happen.
Thank you for that amazing advice, Heather. Let's move on to Jenna.
Yeah, so I applied and got rejected like twice. And like, I applied to like 13 schools or 10 schools every time I applied to vet school. So I was getting like, I got rejected from like 20 schools. So the first time you get rejected, it's kind of like, you don't want to think that it's going to be you that's the one that gets like no. You don't think you're going to be like, I'm going to defy all the odds. Even if you know like your application might not be the strongest, Like I had the grades, but I didn't have the experience. But I said, oh, well, I'm going to get an interview and they're going to know me and they're going to love me and I'm going to get in. And then you don't get in and it's heartbreaking. It is absolutely devastating. But I do think that if it's something you want, then it will eventually add fuel to your fire, and it'll hurt at first. And then you'll be like, well, what can I learn from this and how can I do better? And you just keep going and keep applying. And if you interview places, sometimes they'll give you feedback. And I found that was extremely helpful for me, because every time I did an interview, I contacted the school afterwards to say, if you were me, what would you do to strengthen my application? So that is super helpful. And if the school does that, I highly recommend it. But you kind of just, if you want it, you got to like do the work for it. And it will happen eventually. I can say that for a fact. But yeah.
Thank you so much, Jenna. All right, Elena. Oh, sorry. Before we switch to another question, Hannah, would you like to answer this?
Yeah, I just want to say that like when I didn't get in the first time, it actually opened some opportunities, because I'd been living in the States and I came home. I was able to make some more connections around home in terms of the agriculture industry, in terms of working on my own farm and other people's farms, as well as I got to start nursing at home too, which wasn't something I was expecting to do. And I was actually able to keep those jobs. I still actually work at one of the places that I was working at during that time, and was also able to work like during the pandemic last year, which I wouldn't have been able to do if I had gotten in right away, because I don't think I would have applied to nursing jobs. So even though there's, it's sad and it's hard to get through there, like take every year as, it's not a wasted year. There's still things you get to do. There's still things you get to learn. And another thing I want to say, and I know I can, it may not sound very genuine coming from someone in vet school, but there are a lot of, there are a lot of other opportunities besides just being a vet. There are a lot of different other avenues if you want to be in agriculture, if you want to be in medicine, if you want to deal with animals, because I know, like, personally, I wouldn't have been able to afford to go anywhere else. So if I did apply all 4 times, I wanted to make sure that, I'd be sad if I didn't get in, but that I would still be happy with my life to be able to move forward and do other things. So knowing that school's amazing, and I'm really glad that I'm here, and I'm really, I know that I'm lucky to be here, but that if you don't get in it, it is okay.
Thank you for that, Hannah. Heather, would you like to add another thing?
Yeah, sorry, I just want to echo what Hannah's saying about not getting in and exploring other avenues. I think that's really important. It's the reason I did a master's in livestock nutrition. I knew I wanted to do agriculture. I wanted to work with animals. It was a backup plan. And while I did that, my eyes were really open to a lot of different things out there. And there was a moment during my master's degree that I considered not applying to vet school again, because there's so many other things out there. But as I went on, I felt that it was where I wanted to be and what I want to do. And I had to give myself at least that one more try. But definitely, I know how much it feels like this is the be all and end all, but just keep your mind open and keep looking, because there's plenty of other things.
Thank you, everyone who just answered that question. Those are some honestly very awesome responses. And I really think that sheds a lot of perspective on the fact that, yeah, sometimes you don't get into vet school on the first time, and it's a common part of the application process. Elena, let's go on with the next question.
All right, another question that I was wondering about was, with all the experience that you gathered from your past, how did you overcome the challenges that you faced once you got into vet school, whether that has to do with like the schoolwork and the workload or mental health, and how do you manage that kind of schedule?
Let's start off with Heather, then go to Dylan.
Different perspective here, because I've been in school literally the entire time. I worked as a research assistant for like 1 year and a technician for 1 year, but I've considered myself a long-term student. However, no matter what anybody says to you before you get into vet school, they're going to tell you it's a lot of work. And no matter what you think, it's way more than you can think. Like, I remember before vet school, and when I got in, they were like, it's a lot of work. And I was like, yeah. I've wanted this for so long. It'll be fine. But it is a lot. And it is mentally draining. And you will have, especially during second year, you will have very low points, and you need to just be reminded of that time where you applied and you wanted this so badly. And you need to keep up extracurriculars, like join clubs, join the hockey team, have fun. That honestly is the best part of vet school. Classes and grades should come kind of second. Like, you want to learn, you want to do your best, but just enjoy the time. That's the best advice I have, because you've worked so hard to get in. You may as well enjoy those 4 years, because they are the best and the hardest 4 years of your life.
Yeah, I think Heather really hit it on the nose with that. I always say to people that are applying that vet school will take everything you can give it. And it's not really OVC, to say that. It's that the amount of material and information that is given to you is like far beyond what one brain can master. So if you spend your whole day trying to master everything, it's just not going to happen. And, frankly, most people don't want to work with every single species they're going to be taught about in veterinary school. So, some of it is more important than others, given sort of what your goals are for the future. I definitely think you need to establish sort of your personal limits and boundaries for what, I know how much work I have to do to get where I want to go. And that's what I do. And always take those extra days for yourself. Especially when you're feeling overloaded with schoolwork. But for me, especially coming from a break between high school and undergrad, like I got into first year undergrad and I was like, I haven't written a lab report in forever. I have like no idea what a reference is. Like, it was just a nightmare. So there was a huge like, oh yeah, I'm a student again learning curve. And I think for a lot of people, first year is not really their moneymaker for their marks anyway. So it didn't make a difference in my application, fortunately. But there was definitely I think I'm working hard, work harder, and then work harder. And eventually you kind of hit your stride where you're getting towards, the application range you need to be in for vet school. So it was a big adjustment for me coming back. And I used to like graph my marks to see like how much I'd improved in a semester and like what I could cut out, whatever. Like, just it was an adjustment for sure. At least with vet school, though, I think because most people that get into OVC graduate from OVC, you have a bit more of a sense of security than you do in undergrad. So for those of you that are kind of making that jump from undergrad to vet school, yeah, it's a lot of work. Some days are really not fun, but you're going to get through it and everything's going to be fine. You're going to get your DVM and be able to do what you want to do. And I think that's really valuable and motivating.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Heather and Dylan. Christina, we'll move on to you.
Yeah, so I had a huge shift like at the beginning of the year, because I was entering my first year of vet school, and then I had moved out by myself for the first time, also to a city that was like 5 hours away from like my hometown, and I didn't know anybody over here because I did my undergrad and my master's at Laurentian, which was also 5 hours away. So I was like by myself in a new city. It was like a crazy change, but and then also I hadn't studied really like for tests or anything during my master's. It was like very research based, so that was a huge change as well, trying to balance like classes with studying, and also like 40 hours of lecture a week, and it was a lot. But I've kind of like adjusted throughout the year. I'm still learning, but I do just try, honestly, I just try to schedule nights in my week to give myself like the time to re-energize myself. So I'll schedule like every Friday night. I won't do anything, but like just give myself some personal time. So whether that's going for a hike or going out to dinner with somebody or anything like that, that really helps re-energize myself, especially for studying over the weekend and stuff too.
Thank you, Christina. Let's move on to Jenna.
So I came in from like a 3-year break where I literally did no schoolwork. And I found first semester, like I did okay, but the way I was studying was not sustainable. And so then I found I had to completely change everything about how I learned this semester, which has been a huge curve for me. Like it's good, but it's also like, it's hard, it's difficult because you know how you study, but the way you're doing it just it's not feasible. And then on top of that, like because I was international student like last semester, I literally forced my way across the border. I didn't have a place to live for the first month I was here. So like there was a lot going on, and you know, I haven't seen my family. I was here over break. So it's a lot. Like it's very difficult, and I think with COVID it's like even more difficult to come in when you've not done anything for 3 years as far as academia. But yeah, so I do a lot like Christina does, where I try and like schedule days off, or on a test day after the test, that day is a free day. I don't do any work, regardless of whether I have classes or not. The classes will still be there tomorrow for me to do. And I've just spent all weekend studying. So now I get a free day where I can just lounge around and, you know, quiet my mind before I get back to it.
Thank you for the amazing tips, everyone. I really appreciated everyone just going into detail on that. That was awesome. I have a follow-up question actually regarding the question I just asked. Specifically, what about vet school, or what part of vet school was the hardest? Be that year-wise, content-wise, something like that? Let's start with Dylan, then go to Darren, then go to Heather.
For me, this was a really easy question because the hardest part about vet school is getting in the door. You know, for me, that was absolutely the worst part. Not only because you have to be performing at such a high level, but you never have a guarantee. Whereas, you know, when you're in vet school, you don't do so well on a test. Yeah, well, there are opportunities to deal with that, and you're still probably going to graduate. So for me, that was definitely the hardest part. But to answer the specifics of the DVM program, I think it just gets more content heavy every year. Third year has definitely been the most content we've had so far. I had like 4,000 slides for the last midterm that we did. Like some of it is just insanity, but it's definitely built me into a better learner. I used to make flashcards for everything. Yeah, you're not doing that here for everything. So now I'm a reader. Wow, I couldn't do that in undergrad, but I can do it now. So it's not necessarily difficult stuff. It's just a lot of it, and you know, there's not that much room in there. So for me, it's the content and sort of third year, I think, that's been the most challenging.
Yeah, I'll echo a lot of what Dylan said. Content wise, it's pretty crazy. I found for me the switch from first year to second year was crazy. First year you get going, you're all excited about being in vet school, and there's a lot of good patting on the back, and everybody's kind of like, you belong here. I mean, I feel really bad for the turtles this year because this year was an absolute nightmare to be in first year vet school. So kudos to all you guys. But yeah, so that transition from first to second year was nuts because it's just the content. Like you get started in second year and it starts off okay, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, here come all the tests because you've got so many courses in a row, and then it just never stops. So that was a lot for me. I've never been put that much content heavy. The tech program was a lot more hands-on stuff. It was super busy because we had to do a lot of stuff, but it wasn't like as content heavy as this course is. And like people have been saying, it's a lot to do with the fact that like there's a lot of stuff you have to learn in the like 3 years that you're in class for. So I mean, I don't know if there's any other way around it, but yeah, but the one thing I wanted to say for the other question as well that was posed was, I have found though that the program, as much as you can hate it at times because you're just like, can you please stop? you'll be surprised every year how much you've learned without even knowing you've learned it. So especially this year, now that it's starting to make a lot more sense basically every year. So it's like, why did I have to go through all that last year? It's like, okay, now it makes sense. Now we're applying it to animals and things like that. So it is structured in a way to help you as much as it seems like it's just hurting.
This is all very good to know. Thank you, Dylan and Darren. Let's move on with Heather, then Elsa.
Great point, Darren, and I completely agree. We can all like curse the higher administration that create the curriculum, but there is certainly method to the madness. Having now gone through the 4 years, I would say personally, the content is not overly difficult. Histology is a little bit hard, and maybe growth pathology might be a little bit hard to wrap your head around in first year. That might be the most challenging of actual content to get your brain into if you don't have a background in it. But I loved our histology professor. I think we had somebody different than now. She did a phenomenal job. As after that, then there's pod, second year pod. And I agree. Around November, when you have like 1,000,001 exams and you start feeling tired and burnt out and you're like, what the hell am I doing? Why am I here? There's no way out. But you get out. And you know what? Just having gone through the NAVLE, having to memorize all those freaking viruses and parasites and bacteria, it all comes back to you. There is a method to the madness, and it made studying for the NAVLE so much better. And yes, third year. I think there was a joke in the Kraken's fourth year play that said, in first year, I studied a week before the exam. In second year, I studied the weekend before the exam. And in third year, I was learning as I was taking the exam. And it is very freaking true. Cat and dog was my last exam online last year. And I was terrified. Like, I am not going to pass this. I did not make it through all my notes. Like, I was just burnt out, had just finished 3 weeks of finals. But you know what? Here I am. Passed, did fine, rock on. Your studying will change. Like, if you are a person who likes to handwrite notes, I hand wrote notes for some classes in first year. By third year, I was doing note shares. So me and my friends split up which classes we were doing, and we made charts. And that's the only way really to get through third year. I don't know how people do all their own notes themselves. Highly recommend a note share if you have friends who kind of study similarly and you know that they're going to do their work. Do that. Highly recommend. Fourth year, much easier, except for the NAVLE. There's that small hurdle. And there was some days that I was like, holy shit, they can literally ask me anything about any animal. I had a friggin' question about how many times a rabbit nurses its young in a day on the exam. What the hell? But we all get through it. Some people fail it, but very few people do. And honestly, we get there. You learn and you remember way more than you think you do. Yeah. Not sure if that answers the question, but.
No, that was really on the money, Heather. Thank you. Let's move on to Elsa, then Jenna.
Hey, so for me, I would say first year was the hardest, and that was the result of coming back to school after a few years of not having been in school. I know when I went from high school to undergrad, right? Like as soon as you start undergrad, things kind of hit you hard. You're like kind of knocked down a bit, and you kind of slowly work your way up. And so it took, a good 2, 3, 4 years for me to build up my confidence and be like comfortable and like, yeah, I'm good at school and all that stuff. And then I did master's for 2 years, and that's not really like undergrad or even close to like what that school's like. And then I worked for a few years. And so then I'm like completely out of school, and I was excited to get into vet school, but I was basically already dreading knowing like I'm going to have to sit on my butt for most of my life. So I feel like a lot of people were like really, excited and just like mostly excited about getting in. I was excited and dreading all at the same time. And so I really kind of hated first year, and I found it extremely difficult. I did not find it very helpful that most people in vet school at the time was like, oh, just relax, grades don't matter, let's do all these fun things. And I really should have trusted my gut a bit more and like studied when I thought I should be studying, right? So just like trust yourself, know what you need, figure it out for yourself. I made it through first year. So second year, way more content, but I got my confidence back slowly but surely after about 3 weeks of crying every day for the first little bit. But slowly but surely it got better despite the content getting more and everything getting harder and more overwhelming. I was just able to handle it better. And now, it's probably the hardest that it's been, but it's still easier in a way. So yeah, thank you. That's been my experience.
So I don't know how Christina feels about it, but coming in this year and a COVID year has been quite brutal. Just for the sheer fact that like we don't get to put our hands on very many things. Like anatomy, we do no dissections. Everything is pre-dissected for us and just like laid out on a table. So it's really hard to like try and remember that stuff when like normally you can be like, oh, I'm cutting through this muscle now and and follow the pathway yourself. Well, it's all pre-done for you. So now you're just like basically looking at an animal, looking down and be like, oh, yep, I see it. But you don't get any of that like reinforcement that comes with doing things yourself. So I think that particularly has been a big struggle. And I think it's probably echoed with a lot of turtles that this year is particularly hard to just try and like get that content down.
Thank you, everyone, for those amazing responses. Elena, would you like to go on with the next question?
Yep. So our next question was whether or not you guys think that anyone's at a disadvantage if they don't know what kind of veterinary medicine they want to pursue in the future.
Let's go Darren and then Dylan.
Yeah, this definitely is not true for vet school. So like everybody goes through the same pretty like 3 years pretty much, and then by that point you can start to get an idea of it. But even then, like Heather could probably speak to this too better than me, but the 4th year rotations, like yeah, you've streamed small or mixed or large, but you still get to pick and choose some things here and there. But beyond vet school, even any of the veterinarians I've spoke to that have been in practice for a long time, their career path is just like all over the place, which is the best part about being a veterinarian. So your DVM degree opens countless doors for you that, it doesn't pigeonhole you into like, oh, I have to be a equine vet, I have to be a general practitioner, I have to specialize. It's not like that at all. You can do amazing things with your degree that has nothing to do with even touching an animal if you don't really want to. I mean, you probably will, but a lot of people end up in industry or end up in other careers, and you can always still locum or volunteer and do that thing. So yeah, no, I would definitely say this is one of the most open and even just growing and evolving fields that you could possibly be in. So be excited to be in veterinary medicine.
Yeah, I completely agree with Darren. It's so funny how many times you talk to your peers in vet school and you're like, what do you want to do with your life? And the answer is different than it was 2 weeks ago. And that's just the progression, because you go to like a great radiology lecture, you think, oh man, I want to be a radiologist. And then you think, I don't really want to be a radiologist. And it just, evolves constantly. And I think that's really the beauty and the curse about this profession is that, yes, I have to memorize 100,000 causes of pig diarrhea and what gives cats snuffles and everything in between to be able to write this licensing exam. But the licensing exam shows that you are competent enough to deal with whatever species you want to work with. So if you wake up one day and you say, you know what, I don't really like cows anymore, no problem. You can pick up a textbook and find a job in something else, really no questions asked. So it's extremely flexible that way. And I think it's flexibility that not a lot of professions are really afforded. So no, you're absolutely not at a disadvantage if you don't know what you want to do. I'm coming to the end of 3rd year and sometimes I don't even know what I want to do. So there's tons of opportunity there. Don't worry about pigeonholing yourself.
Thank you, Dylan. Yeah, that was a great answer. I think everyone's kind of concerned about that at some point, so it's good to know that you guys feel that it's not necessarily the thing you should be the most focused on. Let's go Heather and then Hannah.
I'm just going to echo what everyone else says. Definitely, it's a moving target. Constantly, you're constantly going to be introduced to different things that are going to change your mind and change what you want to do. And I think it's so important to keep an open mind and to not close those doors that you might actually enjoy a different career path. Maybe you want to do small animal, and all of a sudden in vet school, you discover that cows are super cool. And I enjoy being a cow vet, and you spend time with other cow vets and you completely change your path, and that's cool. The only thing I would say might get you hung up, and it's not so much that you should know what you're going to do and have a path, like that's not what I'm saying, is for the interview process. I don't think you need to have a path, but I think you need to be able to show that you understand the vet medicine and like what it entails. Like I think you kind of need to know that like I don't just want to be a vet because I like animals and that's cool. I think you need to have a little bit more depth there. So that's the only thing I would caution you on, is that if you haven't really explored the career path that much and know that there's other avenues, like being a clinical practitioner, as Darren said, is only one option. You can go into industry, you can go in academia, you can go into government, you can go into specialties. Like I think making sure that you understand that and understand kind of the big role of a veterinarian in total going into the interview process will definitely be helpful. But yeah, don't stress about that. It's constantly changing and it will change. I get asked all the time, what are you going to do when you graduate? And my answer right now is I think I want to be a vet. I'm 2 months away from graduating. I'm pretty sure that's where I'm at. So don't take yourself too seriously. Just have fun with it and enjoy it. And enjoy, like, pig lectures suck sometimes, but just enjoy it. Like, you're on for the ride. Have fun.
I'm pretty much just going to say what everybody else said, but just from personal experience, I grew up on a pig farm. I went in thinking I was going to be a swine vet, and I do still think that that's going to happen. But this year I started shadowing a large animal vet just to make sure that I got some exposure to cows, as it's a big part of the curriculum, and also got some exposure to small ruminants because my brothers have sheep, so I wanted to make sure I could understand that better. What I wasn't expecting was that I got some exposure to working with working horses. So a big Amish and Mennonite community here. And when people used to ask me what kind of vet I wanted to be, I was like, food animal. And they'd be like, oh, large animal, like horses. And I'd be like, no, I don't want to work with horses. Like it was the only large animal that I was adamant I wasn't going to work with. But after shadowing this with this vet this year, I've come to really enjoy working with the Amish and Mennonite communities and getting to work with those workhorses. So even though I came in with a very set plan and I might still follow through with that, I've come to realize that there are a lot of different avenues that can be very interesting, and just keeping your mind open will allow you to have those opportunities to see what you really do enjoy.
Thank you, everyone. Let's go to Sonia next.
Yeah, I just want to echo a lot of what people are saying. There are definitely a lot of avenues out there and plans change a lot. But at the same time, probably about halfway through second year, I decided I actually do really like eyes. And since then, I'm pretty set on going into ophthalmology at this point. I've spent the last year getting a lot of ophtho experience. So just keep in mind that there's always the opportunity to change your mind. And for sure, I don't know if I'll follow this path in the future, but it's also not a bad thing to set your mind in a plan and go down that route. So if anybody has an idea and they're feeling bad, they're like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have this idea right now. Sometimes that is the route you end up going down. And yeah, I just wanted to say that.
Thank you so much, Sonia. Those were all really great answers, and I think that definitely gives people a more clear idea of what they can kind of expect to be nervous about versus what they really shouldn't stress that much about. Does anyone else have anything to add before we move on to the next question? Okay, cool. Elena, do you want to come in with the next question?
Yeah, another question that we had was what's the most rewarding part of your entire journey? Like before vet school, in vet school, what's been the experience for you that you felt was, this has been worth it for me?
Let's go to Jenna, and then just quickly before we do that, oh, I see Sonia just put her hand down. Okay, let's go to Jenna.
So before I got into vet school, I was able to do a zookeeping internship. And that was probably one of the most rewarding and an experience that I would absolutely never forget. So I got to work with 20 species of animals, and it was like lions and tigers and leopards and wolves, and it was absolutely incredible. And I would not have traded that experience for getting into vet school right away, because I got to do physical therapy on a tiger. Like I literally stuck my arm in a cage with a tiger while she was semi anesthetized, but like she was trying to wake up, and got to do physical therapy on her. And I don't think many people are going to be able to say that they were able to do that. And so for me, like, even though I didn't get into vet school, like that experience alone made it worth the wait for me to get into vet school.
Thank you so much, Jenna. Let's go Heather and then Gordon.
I think it's really hard to put your finger on one thing. There's a lot of small wins throughout the whole journey that make it worth it. Being involved in extracurriculars and clubs, I took a lot of pride in that, and I think that kind of helped me power through. But just as Jenna was talking there, it kind of reminded me, and I apologize for you third years that didn't get to go on your global vets. But that, I think for me, was maybe one of the big eye openers, going to Africa, working in clinics, and being like, wow, this career can literally take me anywhere. I can literally do anything, and I can help people and genuinely do good stuff. And now I have like a kind of little side project to eventually maybe open my own clinic one day in Africa. That's kind of a goal. We'll see if that happens. But I think, yeah, that would be one of the big things there.
And yeah, just echoing what everyone has said so far, like it is hard to pick one moment, but if I were to pick some of them, the first one is what Dylan, you said is, actually getting into OVC was probably the most amazing thing that happened. One of the most thing, and I was in fetal position for probably 15 minutes after that. It was very memorable. But yeah, I'll never forget that. And I think I always use that memory as motivation if I ever lose track of why I'm doing this. I know I worked so hard for this place and I got in, and we all deserve to be here. So that's one thing that I always look back to. I think the second thing is that I was shocked that one of the most memorable experience in vet school so far is not really about vet school, but about the extracurricular stuff that I did outside of vet school. Like in first year, I came into first year not doing, I didn't used to do any sports or a bunch of extracurriculars, but I found soccer with OVC team, and Hannah, you were in it too, and it was amazing. And I played some basketball, and there was volleyball, and there were some clubs, and Bark Lake. And I'm so sad that you guys first year didn't get to go to that this year, but I made the bestest friends from that field trip, and they're still one of my bestest friends now. So like, it's not only about school, and that was super eye-opening to me, because I thought, in vet school, it's just you got to work your butts off for 4 years. But there's a lot more to it, and that's very motivating for me.
Thank you, Gordon. I'm so sorry. I didn't see who had their hand up first, but let's just go Christina and then Hannah.
Yeah, like Gordon just said and like Dylan said, probably getting in was like one of the biggest accomplishments of my life so far. I'm still in phase 1, so I still do get like that. I'm just excited to be here despite how much the workload is at times. And also like getting in was like not even just rewarding for myself, but also like just making my family so proud that I've actually gotten to like where I want to be. Like they were like just as happy, if not more happy, that I got in. So like just seeing that was also really rewarding for myself. And also being able to do first year of vet school, like with COVID, honestly, any hands-on experience that we get with the animals at OVC is absolutely incredible. This year I got to work for the first time with food animals. So I got to work with a cow for the first time, and I got to work with a sheep for the first time. And that was just like, it was just so cool to me to be able to do that and like take those pictures and like brag on Facebook and social media about that. And it's just been amazing so far.
I think for me, one of the most exciting things has been a reflection of when I was actually nursing. So we'd spend a lot of time, I worked in the ICU, so we'd spend a lot of time with the residents trying to figure out cases and figure out what needs to happen. And I worked nights, so only the residents were on. So you were able to have those conversations. And I really enjoyed them when I was nursing. And it made me realize that if I did work with animals, I did want to actually be the vet, because I got frustrated when I got to a point where I could no longer make those decisions, and I had to consult with the resident and consult with the doctors to make those choices. And so one of the biggest things that I've enjoyed has been actually starting to work through real life cases and being able to problem solve and realize, like, have the gears turning in my head and see them and work with vets who are very good at being patient and letting that happen and realizing what you've learned and how you can apply it. And that I'm only in second year, but like once I graduate, I'm going to be able to make those decisions and I'm going to be able to do good things for animals. Has been incredible so far.
Thank you so much, Hannah. So that looks like it actually brings us to the end of this event. So I just want to say a big thank you to all of our wonderful vet students who agreed to come out and, you know, share their stories. I really personally know that I've enjoyed hearing everything every single one of you had to say, and will seriously take it with me on my journey to vet school. And I know many of our members and executives feel the same. So thank you, seriously. It was amazing to hear from you guys, and I'm really sorry about the technical difficulties. I know that's kind of a bummer, but I'm glad you all agreed that we could post this, because I think a lot of other people should have access to this content and will benefit. So luckily we're going to be able to do that. But yes, thank you all so very much again for coming, and have a great rest of your evening. Yeah, go ahead, Heather.
I just want to say you guys are welcome to pass along like my email or whatever to the group in case anybody has any questions going forward about applications or avenues and stuff. I'd be more than happy to talk about them. And now that I'm done the NAVLE, I have lots of free time.
Well, thank you very much for that. We'll definitely pass on your contact information to anyone who wants it. So we'll just we'll make a comment in the description when we post it on YouTube that like anyone can reach out to Heather. If anyone else feels the same way, you can also email me. I put my email in the chat so we can pass on that information so we don't have to go around and all being like, yes, I agree. Because I have a feeling that was what was going to happen. Because I know vet school students are always very generous with their advice and time. So thank you guys again. And unless anyone has anything else to add, I think we're good to conclude this event. No? Well, thank you all. Have a great rest of your evening. Goodbye. Good luck studying for finals and whatever anyone has coming up.
Good luck, everyone. Thank you for coming.
Take care.
Okay.